Mr. Garrett.
Thank you, Chairman Smith, and thank you, members of the panel. And my apologies, I was in another committee and we got here as quickly as I could. I did not imagine that I would have the opportunity in the Foreign Affairs Committee to discuss Alzheimer's. And so I'm delighted that that opportunity has presented itself, and I thank the Chairman again. Now, having said that, I will tell you that you probably didn't imagine the direction that I'm about to go here. I think it's fair to say that a rising tide lifts all ships. I know that's a cliche. And I would ask rhetorically, because I don't want to waste your time, whether or not we do medical research well here in the United States. I think the answer is yes. Relative to the world, we do a pretty good job, right? But the next rhetorical question would be, would the designation of a particular item as a Schedule I controlled substance stymie the ability of entities, whether government or private, to research said Schedule I controlled substance as it related to medical uses? And I think the answer, and if anybody disagrees with me, you're welcome to chime in. You can interrupt. But I think the answer has to be yes. And so obviously some of you are probably miles ahead of me because I'm a lawyer, not a doctor, which means y'all are smarter. But as I look through a list of medications derived from plants, I find medications that help with blood pressure, with malaria, with pain, with dysentery, anti-tumor agents, diuretics, antifungals, sedatives, anesthetics, muscle relaxants. Watch me mispronounce chloroturinase inhibitors, right? I mean, and when you look up medical plants, you'll find a list that is literally in the hundreds. So the question that I have for members of the panel is, and I'm not arguing in the favor of any panacea or any overarching wonderful solution, but might we be well served to review in the United States our scheduling of cannabinoids, whether it's CBD oils extracted from hemp, to allow the research to be done? Because as I look for studies that relate to CBD oil and Alzheimer's specifically, I find a lot of them, and they all come from the Netherlands and Australia and Great Britain, et cetera. And we've essentially tied our own hands behind our back with what I would argue is an archaic legal structure that denies the opportunity to find potential cures or at least aiding elements by virtue of the stigmatization of a particular plant. So the question is, could we further potentially better outcomes and at least addressing symptoms if we were to free the circumstances that currently stymie the private sector and even public monies from being used to research cannabinoids?
Well, I don't know that I can give you a complete answer to that question. Couple of comments, though. You're quite correct that many current medicines were originally discovered as extracts from the natural world, from plants or someplace else. And that's been the case throughout the history of the development of medicines. My own view, and I just speak from a couple of companies that I've worked with, yeah, it would be certainly a consideration if you were talking about trying to develop a scheduled substance as a new medicine. It means you got to do other studies, allowed abuse liability and potential harm. But you know, we used to have a saying, no side effect, no drug. So usually medicines have some unwanted effects along with the desired effects. And the important part about any medicine development program is that you fully understand both of those, so that in the end, if the judgment is that the benefits outweigh the risks, that at least that can be approved with an appropriate labeling of all the benefits and the risks. And it's the nature of a development program that it should investigate both of those things. But if your point is that it would be a way kind of negatively on a company thinking about developing something where you had this whole other side path of trying to mitigate the risk, I think the answer is probably yes.
And there's an inherent cost, right, to that legal sort of...
Sure, there's a cost, more studies, more time, more potential that you're going to find something really... I mean, you don't want to start out with a potential new medicine where you know right off the bat that it's got downsides. I mean, that's...
And there's no arguing, certainly, that there are downsides. But I think if I'm correct, and again, I'm going to let each one of the members of the panel speak to this, that CBD oil, particularly hemp extracted, you don't get high. I mean, it's not even a side effect as it's administered therapeutically, right? I mean, that's...
I think there are cannabinoid derivatives that actually do not make you high. That's
yes, sir.
Correct.
And certainly there are some that you could, right? I mean, I'm not trying to tell the one side of the story, but anyway.